This is the Bates Bobcast, our weekly podcast where we take a look at the week that was in Bates athletics. My name is Aaron Morrison. For the summer months on the Bobcast, we are taking a trip down memory lane with student athletes and coaches from the past. This week, we catch up with Will Boe-Wiegaard, a five-time All-American and the 2006 men's tennis NCAA singles champion. That's coming up on the Bates Bobcast. Will Boe-Wiegaard was the national runner-up in 2005, but entered the 2006 NCAA men's tennis singles championships as a senior unseeded in the field of 32. He proceeded to run the table, winning the national title. He became the first non-track and field Bates student athlete to capture an NCAA championship. Then he went on to have a 13-year professional career, becoming the head tennis coach at Sacred Heart University in 2017. Today, Boe-Wiegaard joins the Bobcast to discuss his time as a Bobcat and his long grind to make it in the professional ranks. When and why did you start playing tennis, and what eventually led you to become a Bobcat?
First, Aaron, thanks for having me on. It's a privilege to be here, and I'm happy to answer some of the questions, and I hope people listening will get some, value out of it. So just to answer the question about, tennis and growing up, it's been in my family for a couple of generations now, at a recreational level. And so it's just a family sport, and we always really enjoyed it. My mother brought me out on the courts when I was very small, 4 or 5 years old, to our local elementary school courts. And I just got the bug like right away. And so she started bringing me out almost daily. And then there was a hitting wall there, and I started hitting against this wall, and I felt just, I was hitting against our garage door. I was hitting against the wall, wherever. And I just found that interaction of the ball and the racket just fun, I guess. And by 7, I started taking private lessons, and we had a local sponsor because my mom was an acupuncturist, and she was a single mother with 2 boys. So she didn't really have all that extra money to, pay for private tennis lessons every single day, But one of the local coaches, Stanley Matthews, over at Four Seasons in Wilton, Connecticut, he just saw, potential in me right away. And so he talked to one of the kind of wealthier members of the club and said, would you be willing to sponsor William and actually my brother as well? So both of us were receiving lessons and clinics, and then we'd go to the tournaments and things a little bit later, obviously. But I played my first tournament when I was like 8, and I was just always into it. I was super competitive. From right away, I wanted to win badly all the time. I would cry after matches if I lost, and it was just important to me for whatever reason to be good at it, and that kind of led me to just play a lot. And I think in the summers, playing 8 hours a day, my mom would basically just drop us off at the club, and she'd go to the office and treat her patients, and we would my brother and I would be there all day long. And they had hitting walls also at the club. So even if we weren't in clinics or in our lessons, I would, love to be out on those walls and hitting. So I was always just doing that. And that eventually led me to become number 1 in New England, in the 18 and unders. And that's when, I caught the eye of a lot of the coaches around the country. And I had offers from, Wake Forest, University of Richmond, Penn State, and a lot of schools. But those were kind of the main ones that I was looking at and took recruiting trips to. And then how I ended up at Bates was Dave Meyer, who is also a Bates alum. He was a member at Four Seasons Tennis Club, and he's older than I am. So he said, hey, why don't you, come and check out Bates? And so I just went up for a recruiting trip, and I honestly I wasn't really going to go there because I wasn't thinking Division III. But when I got there, I fell in love with the campus. It was so beautiful. The coach was amazing. He had told me about his experiences on tour, that being Ivan Lendl's hitting partner, and that he played, on the tour as well. and I just felt in good hands with him. Dave, obviously was a friend of mine, so I'd known him for a really long time growing up. So I felt comfortable with him and his, advice to me. I was also pre-med. So part of the thing too is that my sponsor growing up, he kind of the deal was, I'm going to sponsor your tennis so that you can use that to help you get into the best school possible. So then you can go and become a doctor. And I'd wanted to do that for a very long time. I was always really interested in anatomy and physiology and science, and that kind of stuff was just very, those were my subjects that I preferred to take in school and looked forward to. So that was something that we had kind of decided was going to be the path. And my original sponsor, he likes to remain anonymous, so I'm not really at liberty to say who he was, but he was a CEO of a very powerful, large corporation, and they were in the medical space. So his kind of thing was that he sponsored people and paid for their educations to become doctors. And so he kind of funded, you would pay for their medical school and you would help them, kind of just become doctors. So that was his thing. He just felt like the world needed a lot more doctors, and that was what we had planned on doing. So when I ended up at Bates, it was because I kind of thought that Division I, my scholarship was going to really be on the line there, and I just was afraid that I wasn't going to be able to keep up with the D1 intensity and schedule. And there's a lot more traveling and flying around the country and things so I was just nervous about that and the tutors and whatever else that goes along with it, even though they reassured me so many times that, oh, it's fine, you'll be fine. I just felt like Division III maybe would offer what I needed in terms of very competitive, NESCAC being very strong, essentially trying to win the NESCAC title is like winning the nationals. It's it is the strongest conference by a lot. There are other schools in D3 that are great, but just in general, the NESCAC is the strongest collection of schools, and so every match is just very, very tough. So that was kind of something that drew me as well, and then of course it wasn't going to be as intense and rigorous, of the athletic component. So I would be able to focus a little bit more on my academics. So we just felt like, all of that. It's a great school, obviously academic, great, strong reputation. And so that's why we ultimately decided that I would go to Bates and not to, a Division I school like a Wake Forest or a Penn State or something like that. So I ended up doing that and studied biochemistry and did all the pre-med everything. And but then, as we all know, I won the nationals and was number one in the country, and that kind of led me to try to keep going. And then I fell in love with the Pro Tour, and that was just an incredible kind of experience and education into itself. So that's essentially how that all evolved.
Sure. So you touched on Paul Gassingay, right? Head coach at Bates, still the head coach at Bates, a guy who, as you mentioned, had experience on the Pro Tour. What was he like as a head coach? How did he help you over the course of 4 years?
Yeah, I think that one of the biggest things that he helped me with was, just kind of maturing, being a little bit more of a team player too. I think I didn't play high school tennis very much. I played my freshman year, my senior year, but I didn't really go to practice. I only ever went to some of the matches, and that was just to help the team win. So I wasn't great at being a teammate. So that was one of those things. I was a great tennis player, and I helped the team in a lot of ways, in the sense that I played number one all 4 years and won a lot of matches and all that kind of good stuff. But in terms of just being like a teammate, that was something I had to learn, and definitely made mistakes along the way. And the guys on my team can probably talk about that, even though maybe it's best not to. That was kind of what we had to go through together, but. It's all a learning experience, and ultimately, I have deep respect for every single player I played with, and a lot of gratitude for them putting up with some of the stuff that I would do, as being, strong-headed and super competitive and all that stuff. So coming in a little bit selfish and being that kind of individualistic person, and then Paul helping me with understanding a little bit more about being a better leader and teammate and things like that. And and also just being organized. I think time management skills, I had decent time management skills, but once the pre-med and the tennis came together at that level, I needed more. So, I think time management skill was big. And then he also kind of taught me to have fun, while I was kind of pursuing something big, and we did talk about winning the nationals and being something as a goal. So we had lofty goals from the start. And, obviously that's challenging, but he was really good about trying to like make sure that I was happy and, taking it step by step. So if I had losses or things like that, we were able to talk through those. And if there was something socially on the team that happened, he was able to kind of smooth things out and walk me through that with everybody. So I just think he did a great job in terms of just leading the team. And tennis is kind of, it's an individual sport. So everybody's kind of coming together as individuals, not necessarily the easiest thing to do. And he did have to go through a culture change there with us. So, going from maybe a team that just really focused a lot on just kind of having that family value and not the super drive to, win like the nationals or something big, so he really kind of had to make a transformation there. And I was kind of part of that process, and it was challenging, but we got through it. And by the time I graduated, we had really a strong group of players that he had, recruited with that mentality of let's be a team and let's be a family and let's have fun together, but then let's also take it really seriously and make sacrifices, especially on the weekends or something. And let's make sure we stretch and we, are prepared for our matches and do our best to, get some good performance out there. So that was kind of the challenge that he and I went through together. And I was, I think, the third All-American in the Bates history. And Paul was the second, and I think Bud Schultz was the first. And then after I graduated, I don't know how many there's been since, but it's been dozens. And so, I think there was a good transformation there. And I'm proud to be kind of part of that moment. Anybody who lived through that can tell you it wasn't easy all the time.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask you about the experience of competing in NCAAs, but not just like from you for singles. You were there for doubles.
Twice. I did play doubles once with Sam Duvall, and that was my junior year. And that was out at UC Santa Cruz, where my kind of main rival on a national level, Matt Seeberger, was. And then the senior year was with Tristan Beach. And, so that was great. I think we did manage to get All-American honors from those matches.
Did you have a ton of experience with doubles coming into college, or was that a newer thing for you?
Yeah, no, doubles was not, I think a lot of college now as a college coach, that's funny because I see that happen a lot, but I think doubles is not a game you focus on as much when you're in the juniors. So learning the strategy and the teamwork aspect of doubles is not necessarily, just super easy. So for me, that took a while. But I really enjoyed doubles, actually, and I fell in love with doubles because of, college tennis. So now, I look forward to playing doubles, and, it can be a little tough when you have a partner who beats himself up a little bit. I just like to go out and have a lot of fun and let's just support each other kind of thing. But sometimes you get a partner who gets a little hard on themselves, and that can make it tough, because you're kind of working on digging them out of the hole of negativity and trying to get them to be positive while you're still trying to focus on tactically winning the match. But yeah, doubles for sure. My doubles knowledge and expertise went through the roof, during college.
How did you develop as a player kind of over the course of 4 years? How do you see yourself improve? You mentioned becoming, a better teammate, but maybe just from a tennis perspective also.
Tactically, patterns of play. I didn't really understand so much of patterns of play. I think that was a big thing. So the tactics of the game, both in singles and doubles, and also the mental strength requirement, so just being grittier and being able to handle, getting a serve broken or not, and trying not to give edges to your opponent in terms of that, breaking their hope in a way, so, obviously when you show your negativity, it just kind of boosts your opponent up. So keeps them in the zone, so I think things like that. And I wasn't perfect at it. I still, as a pro, when I went on the tour, I still needed to work on that stuff and get it to be better. And it really wasn't until I was 28 that I finally made the ultimate breakthrough and got rid of negative feelings altogether. So when I would play matches, I just wouldn't have negativity at all. And I wouldn't get, upset. And I would just be out there very, very focused and determined, and concentrating on the tactics and what adjustments I need to make and things like that. So my focus on controlling the controllables and what that means and what those things are, I think was what ultimately I was learning and improving on in college. And Coach Gastonguay did a great job with that.
So your junior year, you're national runner-up in singles. And your senior year, you enter the tournament unseeded. I mean,
Right.
Did that put some sort of chip on your shoulder a little bit? I mean, hey, I was second in the country last year.
Right. Well, I think what happened was I had a senior thesis. So as you know from Bates, like everybody has to write a thesis. And I chose to do a semester-long research thesis instead of a year-long lab thesis as a biochem major. Those are your two options. And the spring season is really the most important for tennis. So I decided to somewhat sacrifice the fall so that I could, do the thesis in the fall. And what ended up happening is I just really wasn't in the zone in the fall because I was so distracted by this thesis. As you know, if you don't pass your thesis, you cannot graduate. So there's a lot of pressure on that. And you're kind of told that as you're, you're enrolling, they kind of give you that warning, like, that, you can't graduate unless you do this really big project. And seniors, complain about it every year. So you kind of, leading into your senior year, you're really stressed about it. And so I was just very stressed about it. And I was thinking, working on it. And it just made it hard for me, I think, in that season to perform well in the fall. And so I ended up having some losses there that, not to discredit the guys who, I think played well during those matches. Evan Tyndall, played very well at MIT in the fall. Nate Edmonds at Middlebury played very well. Brian Waldron at Middlebury also, I think he got a win against me in the fall. So, a couple of these guys, who were all top 8 seeds at the nationals that year had beaten me in the fall. And so I think that's why the seeding committee took me out of the seeding, because I had just recently lost to those guys, which makes sense. But I, really what happened was I just was academically super focused at that moment and was kind of putting tennis on the back burner for a second. Then I got, through that, and I managed to, do very well on my thesis. So I was very happy. And then I just turned all my focus to tennis at that point. And I, my second semester, senior year, I really didn't have that many difficult classes. So I had done all the kind of hard stuff in the sophomore and junior year. So, it was pretty much smooth sailing to graduation day. And I just wanted to focus on the tennis. I was hitting the weights. I was in the gym, I was playing lots of tennis, extra tennis. And, I think I just really was hungry to win the title as opposed to losing in the finals or something like that. So that was kind of my main focus at that point. So I spent basically 3 or 4 months really, really focusing on that. And then by the time we kind of made it out to nationals, I kind of had a wave of just, I've done the hard work. I've done, and this is coach kind of putting me here, and mentally he just said, look, you've done the hard work. It's all behind you now. You've prepared the best you can. So just go out and have fun and, try to put the ball in one more time than the other guy. And so that's what we did. And we knew who I was playing against because I'd played against a lot of those players already. So we had sort of game plans before stepping on the court. So that helps, because you kind of know right away what to do. as opposed to kind of using the first set to explore that. And with the match against Seeberger, because I lost the first set, we kind of looking at each other going, oh, not again. And I just kind of buckled down and just decided, I was going to really try to stay more solid and not let him push me around as much as he was in the last year's match and then the first set of that match. So something clicked. I just started kind of running around my backhand a little bit more, using my forehand more, and just pumped up. I just got pumped up and I went into the zone and I just stopped missing. I just really stopped missing the ball and got into the zone, and that was it. I don't know. I just kind of went through the match, and it stayed like that. I mean, once I found that gear, I kind of just didn't let it go, and every match was pretty routine after that. I basically won every match in straight sets, I think, from that point forward. But something just clicked, and I got really focused. I didn't get upset and just stayed, with my forehand and moved my feet like crazy. And, next thing I know, I was the winner. So it was kind of really fast and it was surreal. And, I think I did get into that zone where you don't realize like time is just kind of flying by and you don't even know what's going on. So it was a great feeling. And that was a perfect way to end the college career, obviously.
For sure. Well, yeah, for some context there, Matt Seeberger, you had faced him in the national championship match the previous year. This year was during the tournament, but it wasn't the final like it was the previous season. But in 2006, you did beat him after losing the previous year in the final. What made him a tough opponent? What made those matches, I guess, so, at least the second one, so dramatic?
First one, he had home court advantage. I mean, he was at UC Santa Cruz on his home courts with probably 200-300 people there watching. So he was, I mean, if you look at Seeberger's record, his collegiate record has to be one of the best ever, of any division. He won the team and singles and doubles championship every single year. The only title he didn't win was the singles title when I took that away from him. So he had literally almost a perfect college national championship like title. History. So I don't know. Seeberger was just tough because he was really mentally strong. He never got upset. He was the nicest guy ever. He was super quiet guy. He's just very internal, kind of an introverted guy. And he just processed things in a way that was very mature from day one. And just very level-headed, good, tactically intelligent, could hit threw the ball well, could slice, could hit top spins, he really had a lot of tools on his tool belt. So it was kind of hard to get through him. And I mean, he did go try to play on the Pro Tour too. I think he did manage to get into the top 100 in the world in doubles at one point. So, if that's an indication of how good he is, but he's very good. Let's just put it that way. He's not just an easy guy to beat for sure.
Did you stay in touch with some of your opponents after you graduated from college? Or when you went on the Pro Tour, you ever run across guys like him or anything like that? Or
I have seen him. I did see him a few times on the tour, and we'd always just kind of, be very friendly with each other and, hey, how's it going? I've bumped into some of the Middlebury guys over the years. At the U.S. Open, I go every year, and I generally bump into a few people there, so there's at this point I've played thousands of tennis matches. So, when I go to the Open where there's like, 250,000, 750,000 people show up to the Open every year over the course of obviously this year's not, but normally, I bump into people all the time, it just like happens, but it's a small, tennis is a kind of a smaller community like that. So, that's fairly normal. But yeah, we run into each other.
So just take me through your final match there against the opponent from Middlebury at NCAAs when you won the national title. Take us through that moment when you realized, the point was won and you're the national champion. What's going through your head?
I have a photo of that moment actually, and it's I have my hands raised up and my head is down, and it's just like you see this look on my face of just like I can't finally, you just can't believe, because you have a goal and you set it for such a long time, and you know all the work you put into getting to that moment, and to then actually have it happen is great. So yeah, just I don't know, it's just a release of stress, I guess, and all of it just comes out, and you're just super happy. And um, and Brian just such a good guy, so to win against him, he's a class act, and I just like him a lot, and I have a lot of respect for him and his game. So it really, he's beaten me before, so all those matches are just kind of anybody can do it, at any moment. So it was my moment, to do it. And I was glad that I was able to have that moment, but, it could have just as easily been his, or, Waldron, or Edmonds, or, Evan Tyndall, or half the draw. So, so
Sure.
it's really, but it was great. It was just a euphoric moment, and I'll always remember that. And, it was great. So happy to have had that.
I'm going to flash back when you first got to college again, I guess. Since you were recruited by D1 schools, as a first year and as a sophomore, were you surprised at the level of play in Division III, or did you feel like you were ready for it?
Well, on my team, coach had already told me that I was going to play number one, pretty much probably play number one. So I was prepared for, being at the top of the pile there. Now, I didn't know necessarily if I was going to be the top right away or not, but we played a bunch of challenge matches in the first few weeks of and it became pretty clear that I was the strongest player on the team. So I felt confident to take the number one spot. Alex McDonald is, a senior at that point. He played two. And I remember he came to my room once and said, "Are you sure you're ready to play number one? There's a lot of pressure, and, just want to make sure you're okay to take it." And it was very nice of him to do that, because he was kind of just looking out for me in terms of that. And as a senior and as a captain, it showed the leadership he has, and he just wanted to make sure, kind of like as a man to man, like, are you cool to do this? You going to be all right? And so I was fine. I just said, yeah, I'm good. I'm happy to do it. Like, I'll just do my best, kind of a thing. And if it's not working out, we can always change me. I can always go down and play whatever. So I'll just go where I'm told. And it just worked out. So, and him and I played doubles together, and he's an awesome doubles player. I learned a lot from him too. I mean, he had incredible returns. I had terrible returns, and he had great returns. And I had terrible volleys, and he had great volleys. And he kind of taught me about taking the ball early and staying low, and punching volleys as opposed to swinging at them and stuff like that. And my previous coaches growing up always told me not to swing at my volley, but, it was just something I as a habit of doing. And he kind of like really showed me not to do that. So that was really helpful from him. But yeah, I was surprised. I think every match I played was not easy. All the number ones from these schools are good. And I think now, looking at Division I as a coach and seeing the D1 levels, what's become clear to me is that there's a depth difference. So D1 has maybe 8 guys who are all really good, and D3 maybe has 2-3 guys who are really good. So it's more just like a depth thing. But the top guys at D1 and the top guys at D2 and D3, all those, and I'm talking about nationally at that point, they're all like very good players, and can like Todd Paul, as a point of reference. Todd was number one in the country D1 when I was playing D3 and at top of D3. And Todd and I grew up in Connecticut here, and we have a long history, and we're great. We're very, friendship. We have a good friendship and respect for each other and things like that. So I've just known him for a really long time, and he's a very good tennis player. He got to 400 in the world, and he's an amazing player. We would play over the summer against each other, some practice sets and things like that, and we would go back and forth with each other. So him being at the top of D1, me being at the top of D3, and I would lose at D3, and he would lose at D1. I just look at that as being kind of, that's what it is. I feel like the top guys in all these divisions are all fairly close to each other. Maybe the top guys in D1, you know, like, I don't know, maybe there's a few freaks out there who are like beyond, but I mean, in general, they're all pretty good players, you know? So it's just a depth thing.
And then did you compete in NCAAs your first 2 years also?
I did play in my freshman year and my sophomore year. Yeah. So I got into both of those. We actually hosted the national tournament in my sophomore year. And I was the eighth seed or the 16th seed. I was one of the seeds, I think. So I think it was a seed. Actually, no, maybe I was not seeded, but then I won a round and made it to the round of 16, something like that. So I ended up getting All-American title. But then I lost. It was the hottest day in 100 years in Maine, literally the hottest day in 100 years. And the guy that I played was from Redlands, California. So he was Southern California guy, used to the heat kind of. And I'm like in Maine training in the snow. And then here comes the hottest day on record in a century. And I played in that and I cramped up, got a heat exhaustion. I had, 200 people from campus showed up at the center, the tennis center there. And, just packed house, nobody could sit anywhere. I mean, it was just, everybody was just jammed in, sardines, because, hosting nationals, so everybody there, and then having one of us be at nationals. So, it was just an exciting moment. I think I was actually leading early in the match. I was up like an early break, and then everybody's like super pumped. And then I just couldn't keep it going. I was so dizzy and nauseous, and the trainers were giving me mustard packs, and I was just trying to, like, they were doing anything they could, packing ice on me, but it just didn't matter. I was cooked.
I was going to ask you, I guess, about the experience of hosting NCAAs, but it sounds like it was fairly miserable, at least for you.
I mean, it was miserable in that sense that I had to lose in front of everybody, but it was, and crumble under the heat. But it was also like an amazing experience to have everybody there watching, and so that was cool. So to me, it was all good. I was sad I lost, obviously, but it was just great to have that experience. So.
Yeah, the Wallach Tennis Center was fairly new then, right? So, that
right.
was nice to have those facilities.
Oh, it was super nice. Yeah, we didn't get to use it very much. I mean, a little bit in the fall, a little bit in the spring, but that's Northeast tennis for you.
Certainly. So, yeah, off the court, I read a Q&A about a lot of all-nighters, keep up with your academics, and you touched on how it affected you senior year in the fall, but how did you manage to, be pre-med through, and play tennis?
I did have to pull some all-nighters, which is not great, but I'm not a genius. So, I can't just show up to some of these, there's a lot of geniuses at Bates, I think that's very clear. So I wasn't like that. I mean, a guy like Nate Stambaugh, who, triple majored in math, chemistry, and physics, and then wrote a thesis that helped cure cancer. So, I was like not at that level. I would have to work towards it. I had to really study a lot and go through my notes, and so it was not like just super easy, but I really enjoyed the science. So for me, it was fun to put that work in and do that. A couple test scores that weren't great because I was just too utterly exhausted to study properly, because I had one instance with biology in my sophomore year. The professor wouldn't allow me an extension because we had gone to MIT for an invitational tournament and ended up winning the tournament. So I played Friday, Saturday, and Sunday all day, every day. And I tried to study. I had the books with me in the van, and then I'd fall asleep on the books in the hotel room. And then I studied on the way back from Boston. And then I fell asleep, that Sunday night, and then Monday morning, 8 a.m. at the exam. And I didn't do very well. I was physically, mentally, totally exhausted. And I just didn't have the time. But that was time management, because I could have also tried to prepare a little earlier, in that week. It just, that's part of the learning. That's part of the time management. So, if I could do it all again, I would do it better. But you know what I mean? But yeah, it was a challenge for sure to do that. But it's great. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
And well, now you're the head coach at Sacred Heart, but for a while you were grinding on the pro tour. I mean, I read a story about you sleeping in your car at times. I mean, tell me about the experience being on the pro tour when maybe you're coming from a D3 school, so you're coming to try to move up that ladder without maybe the prestige as some other possible opponents and stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, coming from a Division I school, you're going to get a little bit more of maybe attention from sponsors or, IMG, maybe Academy, who knows what, but, I was still a national champion. So that's still helped a lot in the eyes of people. And, I think that was kind of the hardest thing, honestly, was affording to do it. I really just didn't have the financial strength there. That was like a major Achilles heel for me. So it was hard for me to afford, any kind of professional training environment or go to these tournaments and live any kind of like a comfortable lifestyle. I did sleep in my car and, I did try to drive down to Florida, the night before to then play the tournament and drive home so I could save for a night of hotel. I mean, silly stuff like that. And that's not good for your body. I mean, you're just destroying your body. And these guys are there for a couple of days before the tournament and they're staying in the hotel and they're, totally fresh as a daisy. And you're like totally beat up from a 24-hour drive down from Connecticut to Florida, stuff like that. So there's a lot of tournaments that just, I wasn't anywhere near what I, could be just because of the environment that I was in and the resources I had. But I tried to just make the best, and there are people who have less. So, that's the whole thing. I mean, there's people who had less than me and there's people who had more than me. And that's just always the case for all of us all the time. And I try to remind, my players that too, there's schools that have more resources than us. There's schools that have less. And, you just got to use what you got and you just try to do the best you can with what you got. And it was always a battle of fundraising, but then training, because chicken and the egg, right? So you got to win matches to get the people to donate and give you money or feel inspired enough or motivated to give you money. So, but you need money to train to then play the tournaments. So, it's kind of this double-edged sword. So I was teaching tennis too, to try to also make the money and go out. But ultimately, I just believed that I had the ability to do it. Bud Schultz was a finalist. He made it to the top 30 in the world. There were other players who I had played against who were doing well. So I could kind of feel that where my sort of potential was. The first tournament I ever played, second tournament I ever played was a few weeks after nationals. And I played a guy, Fabrice Martin from France, who was like 400 in the world. And I lost like 4-4 or 4-3, like one break in each set. And I said, well, this guy's like 400 in the world. And this is my like first kind of week or 2 weeks out on tour. Maybe I could do this, So that kind of gave me hope and inspiration kind of right away that I could kind of do it. And I was seeing what the level was out there on the futures guys. And I was like, okay, like they're good, but it's not like totally insane, at least that's how I felt. I know a lot of people don't feel that way. They go to this place and, oh my God, that guy's so good, and, I think if you're having that feeling, then you're probably in trouble. You should never, I don't think, feel that way. And as long as you're honest with yourself, then that's the most important thing. Don't be delusional. But no, I just always believed in myself in terms of my physical ability, my coordination, my competitive spirit, that kind of stuff. So I was like, let me try. And yeah, it was grind. I mean, it was a true grind, but it was a lot of fun. And I got to travel around. It's, once I got my first couple points, then I was able to get into different tournaments so I could travel around a little bit more. And so that was fun. And, you start kind of networking with players and coaches and academies, and you start kind of figuring it out and getting better training environments. And I got onto a club team in Hamburg, so they started paying me to play there. And so that was kind of good. And, learned some stuff there, and then it goes to the next one. And then, so, Yeah, next thing I know, I'm in the Montreal Masters in 2012 playing qualities of a Masters, so that was an amazing experience. And I'm a hitting partner for a guy who got into the Australian Open. So I got to fly down to Melbourne and be, basically you get the pass to go all over the place. So I get to see what that whole thing is like and interact with a lot of the best in the world and see what they're doing with their teams and learn about that. So there was a lot of great experience that I had just doing it, even if I didn't make it to the top 100. And I think the natural people ask me, like, why did you stop, or how did you know when to stop? If that's another kind of point to figure out. And some people, oh, why did you go so long? You should have stopped at 25, but the job wasn't done for me at 25. I still knew I had more in me, and I hadn't gotten the world ranking point yet. So I was like, I want to get a world ranking. I want to be a professional tennis player, and do think that that's important. And I knew I was very close. So it just was a matter of time for me. And it did eventually hit at 26, 27, 5 years in. It was right around that time when I started mentally getting, all kind of calmed down and maturing. That was when I was able to kind of do it. So that was the thing. But once I played Raonic when I was probably 26, and we went 3 sets. Milos was, I don't know if you know who Milos is, but Milos Raonic is kind of a household name now in tennis. But back then he was 900 in the world, and 145 mile an hour serve, this giant guy, with not a great backhand, but good serve basically, and decent forehand and volleys. And I played him in a futures in Florida, and it was 3 sets, and and people were like, oh, do you know this guy who you just played? I mean, he's actually kind of an up and comer, this guy's going to be something, and I was like, oh, okay, cool. So fast forward a couple years, I guess I'm 28 now, 29 probably, and I see him in the finals of Wimbledon, and I'm like, okay, so just a few years ago we were like neck and neck, and now you're like playing like Federer in the finals of Wimbledon. So what's the difference, And okay, he's got a 145 serve, I've got a 135 serve. So, yes, he has a pretty huge serve, but it's not everything. But he had a good team, and he had big support from Tennis Canada. And I mean, he's very talented. I'm not saying that he's not. And he's a great, he's a great player. But I don't think that, if you were to ask Milos and be like, oh, is Will a terrible tennis player? I think he would say, no, he's actually pretty good. And we've seen each other, we trained with each other after that. We trained with each other in Montreal for a couple of weeks. And we would bump into each other periodically at tournaments along the way. And there was always that, respect, because he did play me and he does know what I can do. And even though he got to become a star and be the top, really at the top of the game, I think there was always sort of an appreciation for the fact that he had a little bit more support than I did. And, and I think there's a lot of players out there that suffer from the same consequence of just not having that support, and that's okay. That's fine. It's just the way the world is. So I don't hold grudges to any player. I'm just like, that's awesome. Good for you that you've got all that. I hope that you would appreciate it. I hope you appreciate it and you use it wisely and all the rest. And I think he does a great job representing the sport. And so I'm glad that he made it all the way up there. And with all the players, they're all good guys. So.
Sure. You mentioned a lot of people ask you why you stopped. I'm going to ask you why you started, only because you were supposed to go to med school.
I know. I've always competed in tennis. It was always the love, that I had since I was 5. I mean, I loved it. So I just didn't feel done. You just don't feel you hadn't reached the end yet. And I felt like there was more for me to gain and go farther in the game. And just, I knew also, and we talked with coach about this and my family and friends and stuff. And we all felt like I should go try, because med school will always be there. And if that's really what I'm supposed to do, then you can do that in your 30s. You can do that in your, there's people go to become doctors in their 40s and 50s. It's not something you have to do right away. Sure. But tennis and pro tennis, that has there's a time limit because your body physically just runs out of gas. So, I mean, I think Federer's pushing, that a little bit farther, pushing the envelope on that. But, when I was 22, it was Andre Agassi at 35 being like, this guy's pushing it, Most people thought like 30 was kind of the end game, for pro tennis on the men's tour and stuff like that, and even younger for the women. So it was like, go give it a shot and see how it goes. But once I went out, I just fell in love with it. I just thought, wow, this is so cool. We've got players from all over the world. They're unbelievable at this game. It's so fun to watch. It's so fun to hit with them and play with them and be at this level and travel around and see all these different cities and however I have to do it. I mean, there was guys on tours. There's one guy who lives in a school bus and, travels around in the school bus, and he lives in it, and he sells the bed for $10 a night. You can stay in the thing, and he strings rackets, and he goes to the Chick-fil-A openings. So whenever you go if there's a Chick-fil-A grand opening, if you go there, they basically have a party, and if you stay the whole time it's 24 hours from 8 a.m. to the following 8 a.m, they'll give you a year's worth of Chick-fil-A coupons. So this guy would find out where these things are and go to them and get years supplies of food for this, and then give them to players and all this. I mean, trust me, the tour is nuts. There's players just doing all sorts of stuff out there to survive it. I was doing laundry in my room, in my sink, and then using a tennis string as a clothesline and hanging it. I mean, trust me, you save $1 any way you can,
Certainly. I was curious, now you're the head coach there at Sacred Heart, as we touched on. You mentioned earlier how maybe coming into college, you weren't necessarily the biggest team guy. You had to learn how to be a team guy. Did you ever envision yourself being the head coach of a college tennis team? I mean, that's crazy, right?
Well, no. And I kind of wanted to get into college coaching after the tour was done. So I went to Fairfield U, because I'm from this area, and they had an assistant position open, and he's like, yeah, I'll pay you like $5,000 a year. And I'm like, what are you talking about $5,000? How do you survive on $5,000? So it just didn't make sense. So I was kind of saying, okay, I'll do the normal thing, what everybody in tennis does, like they go to Wall Street or whatever. And so I had an investment firm in Westport who was going to take me on, and I was going to sign the U4 form and hand that in. And it was so funny because at that moment, Monday morning was when I was going to walk into this guy's office and hand him this form and start working for him. And that weekend, I got a call from Sacred Heart, and they said, hey, would you like to come in and do the interview? Because we have an opening for the head men's and women's tennis program. And I was like, oh, okay, great. So I decided that that's what I wanted to do and try to get. So I pushed the investment guy off for a week, and I said, hey, let me check this out, because I really do want to do college coaching. And it's really the one thing I hadn't done. I'd coached, pro players. I'd coached WTA and ATP players. I'd coached juniors. I'd coached at these clubs and done all the members and all that stuff. But I'd never really coached college tennis, and I always thought it was interesting. So I went in for the interview, and I kind of told him my story, how I played college tennis and went on the tour and had to find sponsors and, all this kind of stuff. And, they hired me kind of on the spot, and the rest has been history. But I think I'm kind of a good guy for it, because I wasn't a team player, but I learned the value of it. And, there were a lot of things I learned later in life as a more of an adult. And so I think that helps, because I can really explain things clearly. And I get it. I was a racket smasher later in life, in the juniors and in college, and a little bit even on the tour. So, it was kind of something I had to learn to do later. And that I consciously had to do it. I had to do it. It wasn't something natural that happened as I was young, or, and you don't know how it happened. So I get to work with players now who have these emotional issues, who can't control their emotions or get really frustrated, or, whatever, their perfectionism gets the best of them. And I'm able to work with them now and kind of show them the light and how to control that energy, direct it in the right way. And the results now, from the teams have been great. And the players are really enjoying it, and we're having a great culture, and it's a great experience, and it's a lot of fun for me. So I mean, it's a lifestyle choice. I mean, Wall Street, you make a little bit more money for sure, potentially, but I enjoy the lifestyle I have right now, and the teams are great. So I think Coach Gastonguay can relate to that, and that's why he's been doing it forever, I think, and that's why I think coaches, when they get into it, kind of stick around, because it is a lot of fun. It's a lot of work, but it's a lot of good fun work. So
anything else you wanted to mention about your time at Bates we haven't gotten to discuss, or anything like that?
No, I enjoyed it. And I think, the campus is so beautiful. And, for me, I just had such a great experience there with tennis, with academics, and the people that I met there. And it was just it's an impressive place to go for 4 years. And the people that you kind of like bump into along the way are all very, very talented in many different areas. And so it's a cool little community there. And the alumni is very strong. And anytime I ever need anything, I know that I can kind of count on the Bates Alum Network to kind of help me. And so that's been great. So no, it's just all very, very positive, experience. And, I think they do a good job creating an environment where you can, make mistakes and learn from those mistakes and move on. So I just wish Coach Gastonguay all the best in his career here. And, he's just had an amazing run, and I hope, he can, win a team championship one day. That would be obviously fantastic. It's really not easy to do, but he's doing an amazing job. He's run an incredible program for so many years. And now he's coaching me how to coach. So, it just doesn't stop. That relationship doesn't stop. And I owe so much to that man. It's incredible. And he's given so much to so many. And, I just respect him so much, and I appreciate everything he's done for me.
Next time on the Bates Bobcast, we'll have another interview with a Bobcat great from years gone by. That's next time on the Bates Bobcast.